XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. The MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Hello, Media from Canon. How are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our live stream. Uh, Very excited today to be talking to you about our latest Cinema EOS camera, C300 Mark III. I did a short introduction about myself last time. So, Media from Canon UK, one of the pro video product specialists. So hopefully we'll give you a short overview of the camera, and then we'll try and answer everyone's questions on the camera.
Absolutely. I'm sure all of you know why we're here. I'm sure all of you have already watched our video that we put live on the brand new, hold it up, Media. You've got it there next to you, haven't you? The C300 Mark III.
Ta-da!
There it is. So this is obviously an incredibly exciting new camera. It is perfect camera in its lineup for what we do here at ProAV. It is a really hits that nail on the head between being a very high-end camera with a lot of features and being a good all-purpose broadcast camera in large sensors anyway. But the purpose of this stream is not necessarily to be a product overview, although we will start by going through some slides and some of the features of the camera with Media. But the main purpose of this stream is for you, all of you viewers out there, to have a chance to ask your questions directly to Media, who's there. She's got the camera next to her. I had the camera a couple of weeks ago and had a chance to use it as well, so I might be able to answer some of your questions as well. But yeah, this isn't for us to tell you about things. This is for you to ask us about things. So if you leave questions in the chat there at the side of the live stream on YouTube, we will be able to see your questions on this laptop as we go and answer them live. So, shall we jump over to this PowerPoint presentation? You tell us about some of the new features, Media?
Yep, let's start. Might as well just go to the next one.
Lovely.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, C300 Mark III, next generation Cinema EOS camera. It is equipped with a new, brand new Super 35mm sensor with dual gain output, or a DGO sensor. This allows a camera to offer over 16 stops of dynamic range. In camera raw recording, we've seen it in C200, we've seen it in the C500 Mark II, and now it's in the C300 Mark III.
This is a fascinating part of the camera, that it seems to be that cinema raw light, or just raw in general, seems to be this constant across Canon's lineup now for this year.
It's getting there now, yeah.
Yeah, nearly on every camera you make.
Pretty much. High frame rate. So this is a feature that everyone has been asking about. The camera can now record 4K up to 120 frames in Super 35, or even pushing it up to 180 in Super 16, which is crazy. XFAVC, so 4K 422, 10-bit.
Yep.
Not only in all-eye, but you also have the option to use long up as well for longer recording times, smaller file sizes.
This is going to be great for anyone doing TV production, anyone doing documentaries, things like that. This is the codecs that people are asking for. This is the codecs that they want, this good 10-bit broadcast quality 4K codec. It's there whether you want it in all-eye for large file sizes or long up for smaller file sizes. It's there.
So you do have that flexibility. User interchangeable mounts. Again, we saw that with the C500 Mark II. Now we have it with the C300. So that gives you creative freedom. You can change lenses and not worrying about the mount, because you can change it yourself. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that the camera continues to use the modular design that's been very popular with the C500. So we're using the same body to a certain extent. It uses the same accessories as the C500 Mark II. So it's
absolutely
a great piece of equipment.
So this is quite an interesting slide. Who do Canon see this camera as being primarily for?
It will be for a wide range of applications. So as I said, again, going for the modular design with all the accessories available, especially with the extension. Those familiar with the C500 Mark II, we have extension units that you can use on the camera. The fact that the camera doesn't have a viewfinder, that obviously allows even more people to use it. Wide range of applications, again, because of the internal recording options. So you're looking at broadcast documentaries, corporate videos. You're also looking at film schools as well, news, interviews. So it does actually cover pretty much the whole range. So anyone can actually use the camera. So you do have that flexibility. And as I said, that's all thanks to the Cinema Raw Light internally, the XFAVC 42210-bit, the electronic IS for those using the camera handheld, the audio options. So as I said, the camera is capable of basically suiting everyone's needs, really.
So,
and covers pretty much all applications.
This is one of the most interesting parts of because
yes.
The other thing, we've all been waiting for high frame rates, and that's one of the most exciting parts of the new thing, the new headline grabbing, attention seeking feature. This, for some people, can slip under the radar a little bit because it's a little bit more techy, but this is potentially one of the most interesting new things that we're seeing Canon do differently with this camera.
Very
do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, so this is key for us. I mean, there are a number of cameras on the market using dual base ISO or dual native ISO to maximize dynamic range. Our approach is actually achieve the maximum dynamic range, but at any ISO value. So you're not limited to two values that you have with the base ISO or the dual base ISO or dual native ISO. The way that a dual gain output system works, or the sensor works, it simultaneously generates two image signals, different amplifications, and then it combines those two images together to produce, basically give us HDR image in real time.
So by HDR image, you don't mean edit ready HDR like a HLG, although it can do those things, but that's not necessarily.
So this is basically done at sensor level. So what the camera is doing is basically combine image using a lower amplification signal and another one with a higher amplification signal, and then you get the two together, then it basically sends it for processing. So the DGO, even though I think explaining the process, it might sound like it's quite a lot and it goes through processing, it is actually done at sensor before even looking at image processing, which is what enables the camera to actually do DGO at both XFAVC and Cinema Raw Light as well, because if it was processed in any shape or form, it will be mainly XFAVC, but because this is done sensor level, you can have DGO active even when shooting Cinema Raw Light. The benefit of this is your dynamic range you can achieve in excess of 16 stops, which is great. That's now just almost a stop more than a C300 Mark II.
I did a stream with Philip Bloom where we did a survey on the perfect camera and put a bunch of camera features up on a survey and got people to vote on what was most important to them, and dynamic range, but far and above, came out on top above everything else. I mean, things like high frame rates in 4K, word's definitely up there, but because I knew about this camera when we were doing that survey, because I was making the video that people saw yesterday at the same time. And just as those results for the perfect camera came in, I was just sitting there thinking, this is what Canon have been trying to achieve with the C300 Mark III. I mean, dynamic range, head and shoulders above everything else, just came out on top as topped the thing that people were most, that they valued the most in a new camera. And it does seem to make a big difference to the usable dynamic range.
It is, as I said, what we're trying to achieve with this. As I said, we're trying again to make it clear that it is completely different to dual base ISO, completely different systems, and it's still even different to probably those familiar with other dual gain sensors out there, like the one on Arri. So, just the way.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because this is very new to Canon, but other manufacturers, well, I think it is only Arri that I can think of have been doing something similar to this for a while, as in using two different amplifiers at the same time to get prioritize different parts of the image. How is the way that you guys are doing it and the way that they've been doing it different?
The standard or your typical dual gain uses two amplifiers. Our system uses a single amplifier, which makes a massive difference in terms of the power consumption. So it produces less heat. There will be less need for a cooling system to work obviously is hard if you were using 2 amplifiers. And then there is the form or the size factor as well. You can actually make the camera smaller as well. So there are benefits to it.
Gotcha. Because the camera is
still
nice and
similar
small.
principle. So
I guess that might be a big part of why your camera draws so much power less than the Aries. Because I think the Aries are something like 50 or 60 watts an hour. I mean, what's the power draw on the new C300?
not off the top of my head. I mean, I know they quoted about the BPA 60 lasting for about an hour, 130 minutes. Which is more than what we had on, as I said, on the C500. And this is when recording Cinema Raw Light. And now on the C500, you were probably getting about an hour and a half, roughly. So I think this already, you can see the improvement with the C300 Mark III.
Absolutely. Anything on this slide we want to talk about?
Not really. I mean, as I said, I mentioned earlier that the amplification itself, it takes place at sensor level, just so that it doesn't confuse anyone terms of processing, because when you start processing, you're adding more noise. And then the benefits with our DGO in terms of the, as I said, low noise, and then the power consumption as well, which means the battery will last longer.
I guess
dual pixel CMOS AF, actually, that works fine with obviously. So DGO is active by default, so there is no feature that you need to enable or disable. When shooting in Super 35, it is active up to 60 frames. When in Super 16, it's active up to 112 frames.
Okay, gotcha.
In both situations, dual pixel CMOS AF works as well, so you have no worry about losing the AF.
Yeah, fantastic. Another thing that's interesting point here is that the optimum level, I guess, where the native ISO is at ISO 800 in C-Log2.
I mean, even though, so obviously that DGL will work at any ISO, and it will still give you the highest dynamic range possible at that ISO, reducing noise. The optimum is still 800 with C-Log.
Gotcha. Okay, so
size. Obviously, we're familiar with, as I said, with the C500 Mark II. The camera is smaller if we're comparing it to the C300 Mark II, slightly lighter as well. And as I said, the fact that you don't have a built-in viewfinder, it gives you flexibility using it on gimbals and drones and different handheld rigs as well.
Absolutely.
I mentioned the user interchangeable mounts. The camera comes with an EF mount, but you do have the option to change into a PL mount or an EF mount with Cinema Lock.
It's easy to pass over this because it's what we're used to from the C500. But this is so important. It is such a brilliant feature of the C500 Mark II and now the C300 Mark III. This just taking the interchangeable mounts by themselves. Being able to quickly and easily swap yourself on the field during a shoot between PL, locking EF, and normal EF. Even if you're only using EF glass, being able to choose between the locking one and the normal one for whether you're using wireless follow focuses and you need no wiggle at all, or whether you just want the speed of a normal locking, normal twisty EF. It gives people so many options.
Yeah, so you're not limited, because previously, if you bought an EF mount, you're kind of stuck with the EF mount unless you have to send it for service for it to be replaced. Whereas with this, you can, as I said, as long as you buy either the PL mount or the Cinema Lock EF mount, you can just do it yourself in a matter of minutes. The viewfinder, optional viewfinder, is very useful for handheld shooting. As I said, with the original C300 Mark II, you had the viewfinder built in. Now you do have the option to use it or to get it if you need it. But as I said, it doesn't come with the camera. Extension unit in 1 and 2, we've seen with the C500, they're exactly the same. Added usability with those cameras, especially with the extension unit 2, using Vlog batteries, added connections for IP streaming, for example, with the 2 of them, if you need to do that. So you can actually build up the camera from a run and gun handheld camera into a full production camera with those accessories.
Absolutely.
This is another important one as well in terms of the internal recording. So thanks to the Digic DV7 processor, the camera is now capable of recording Cinema Raw Light internally. Cinema Raw Light is recorded in 2CF Express cards. Again, we've seen the same cards used on the C500 Mark II. So in Cinema Raw Light, Super 35 mode, you have 4K DCI.
Yep.
And that's at 10 or 12-bit depending. So 1560 frames, you get 10-bit. If you shoot in 30 or lower, you've got 12-bit. In Super 16, it's a 2K. Same principle again. So 50 or 60 is 10-bit. If you shoot in 30p or lower, is 12-bit. At the same time of when you record in Cinema Raw Light, you do have the option to record a proxy. So it's a 2K proxy, 4208-bit into the SD card. That's similar again to what we have on a C500 Mark II.
And I suppose the C300 Mark II as well. I mean, that was there
actually, that's true. Just to give you an idea in terms of the file size, so if you record in Cinema Raw Light, 4K DCI Cinema Raw Light, you're looking at about 64 minutes on a 512. So half terabyte, you get just over an hour.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is pretty good. I mean, thinking about recording standard RAW externally and having to get an external recorder and additional storage, that actually takes a lot of space. XFAVC is the other option that you have. So you can record XFAVC, again, 42210-bit, and that's where you have the option between using All-I, which is what everyone is familiar with if they want to edit, or long up if they want smaller file and they want to record for longer. It does make a massive difference because it pretty much halves the bit rate and doubles, actually more than doubles the recording time on the cards. Just to give you again an idea, if you're recording XFAVC at 50 or 60p, 4K DCI, you're roughly getting about an hour, 20 minutes. And you get over like 200 minutes, which is over 2 hours, if you go long up, which shows basically,
to file sizes.
Again, with this one, even when recording XFAVC, you can record a 2K proxy as well. And that will be, again, as I said, 4208-bit, and it will be long up.
Very nice. Now, this is probably the most exciting thing about the camera from first glance.
Apart from DGO, yeah.
Well, DGO is DGO is very important, and I think is going to be the thing that makes the most difference to everyone's work. This is what's definitely going to have got people excited instantly as a gut reaction. Because people have been waiting for this from you guys for such a long time. Let's face it.
It's been, I mean, let's be honest. I think it's been, 6 years since, well, the C300 Mark III is about 6 years. And I think probably a couple of years after the C300 was out, people started asking about this. And even last year where we introduced the C500 Mark II, people asking about when is the C300 Mark III coming out and will it have this? And this is basically the main feature that everyone wanted, high frame rate, 4K up to 120p.
It does feel a little bit like this is and don't take this the wrong way, but it does feel like this is the first Canon launch where I haven't had to have the conversation with a customer about, but it's a shame about the slow motion. Because this is exactly what people have been asking for from high frame rates. And it's not just that it can do it, it's that it does it very, very well. The footage that I managed to get, I mean, it was only in my back garden of my cat, but I was very pleased with the results. They're really detailed, even at 4K 100 frames a second.
I mean, there is a video made by Canon USN, which is on YouTube. I definitely recommend everyone watching it because you can actually show you can see the use of the 120 frames at 4K, and it does make a massive difference. As I said, so the camera will allow you to shoot up to 120 frames in Super 35, and that's in both Cinema Raw Light as well as XFAVC. So you're not limited to one or the other. When shooting in Super 16, you can even push it to 180 frames per second if you really want to go all crazy. When shooting up to 120 frames, you still have dual pixel CMOS IF, so you still have the autofocus, so you don't have to worry about losing that when going to these higher frame rates. A shortcut to actually quickly change from standard frame rate into high frame rate. So you have two added buttons on the side of the camera, same as what we've done with the C500 Mark II. So you literally press the first button to enable the high frame rate, second one to kind of highlight the frame rate and then start changing it yourself. So it takes seconds rather than having to go through the menu to do it.
And the first button does remember what the frame rate that you were last on.
Yeah.
So
it'll start it that if you want it.
Which is and it's so fast as well. It happens. It's hard to convey in a video unless you do a split screen as to how quickly it's responding. But it is almost instant. You press that button and you're in 4K 100 frames a second.
It is the fastest way of doing it, because as I said, going back to the way it used to be done in other cameras, you would have had to go into the menu, find it. Even if you saved it in My Menu, it still would have taken you probably a minute longer to get to it. So
absolutely. So electronic IS, I believe this is just the same as it is
exactly the same as the C500, yes.
And I've seen a couple of people have already had some interesting questions about this. Let me see if I can pick those out from the things. Right, so from Malcolm De Bono says, can you elaborate on how the electronic stabilization works? Does it affect the resolution since the image isn't being downsampled like it was on the C500 Mark II?
It's only in XFAVC, so it's not in Cinema Raw Light.
Sure.
There is about 10% crop, but it doesn't affect the resolution. So 4K, your 4K is still 4K. It basically detects these vibrations. It's not an optical image stabilizer, so it is electronic. So it detects the vibrations and then corrects them digitally. And as I said, with the exception of that 10% kind of cropping, there is no resolution loss or anything when enabling it. And it does make a massive difference when using the camera handheld, especially with if you're shooting wide or even with zoom lenses. Standard EF lenses, for example, the camera will detect it automatically and you can see it. PL lenses up to 1,000 millimeter or even anamorphic lenses, you can actually enter the focal length for the camera to use it to correct the shake.
That's how so my footage of the cat, even though it was in slow motion, I had this on because I was handheld, obviously trying to play with a cat at the same time as film, which wasn't the easiest thing in the world. But yeah, it did a brilliant job just with a Sumire on it. Yeah.
So that's an example. And then when you're shooting obviously 4K, you are obviously monitoring on handheld. You're looking at the small screen, so the movement might not look that much, but the minute you put it on a larger screen, that's where you see the difference. Sure. And it does make a massive difference. As I said, we've tested it with the C500 Mark II, and you can see the same difference enabling it with the C300 Mark III.
Right. So this slide, I just want to talk about.
I've just noticed, obviously, that it's C500, but anyway, it is a C300 because.
Oh dear.
Basically, this camera reproduces colors better, especially reds. And then the blue LEDs, as you can see from the images, is the same as with the C500 Mark II. But you said you had questions.
Well, I guess it's just an interesting slide to have up on a Canon presentation because, I mean, you guys have always been known for your colours. Colours is the one thing that nobody's been asking you to improve on, really. I guess how much of this is to do with tweaks you've made to the color science and the gamuts and stuff like that, and how much of this is a direct result of the DGO technology? And
no, we had this in a C500 Mark II as well, so it's not
okay.
I mean, the DGO, when we talk in color, because obviously it's improving the dynamic range, it will have a slight effect, but the main one is the algorithms used internally within the camera. Some of it is improvements, and others are actually newer algorithms to improve the color reproductions. But as I said, it's the same as what we've had in a C500 Mark II.
Brilliant. Okay. So the cameras that this and the previous models that it's talking about, is that just the C300 Mark II, do you reckon? Or is that classing things like the C200 in with that?
Well, I mean, if we're comparing it or, sorry, what?
Yeah. Would you say the C200 would have, would you put that in the category of the previous models in terms of before this color?
I probably would put the C300 Mark II on the previous models rather than the 200 or the 500. So.
Gotcha. Okay, right. Let's head over and take some questions, shall we now? Because we've got a fantastic amount of people watching and they've all been very vocal with the comments, which is brilliant. Please keep these questions coming throughout. This is what this is really all about. So, how is editing the 12-bit? When Matthew Atkin Films rented out the C200, the 12-bit was a bit rough to edit compared to others. What are the others that you are referring to there, Matthew? Is that the MP4 on the C200, or is that other RAW formats? But do you want how is because I believe it's supported pretty natively now in most editing.
So basically, even obviously those testing the camera now, they can basically use all existing software with it. So there is nothing different in time that needs to be added to any other software. So
brilliant. I mean, in terms of editing, playing back the RAW is heavier on a computer than playing back all-I XFAVC. It just is. So if your camera couldn't cope with the RAW from the C200, it's unlikely that the RAW from the C300 or the C500 is going to be easier on it than in the C200. But I would draw your attention to, if you like, that XFAVC, because XFAVC, that's exactly what it's for. It's for smaller file sizes than RAW, quicker edit times than RAW, for that sort of environment. Okay, we've done the electronic stabilization. Does this camera downsample when recording in HD since it has a 4K sensor, says Elias Blencrow. Sorry if I'm butchering your name there. Apologies. Media, we've got downsampling?
But for 2K and full HD.
Yes. So I guess that's one of its big differences between the C300 Mark III and the C500 Mark II, is that in the C500 Mark II you'll get downsampling in 4K as well as in 1080p.
So with the C500, because it's a 5.9K resolution, so you do get 5.9K oversampling to produce 4K on a C500 Mark III.
Gotcha.
Which obviously we don't have with the C300 Mark III. Absolutely.
So Corey Jennings asks, how is the battery life compared to the C500? I assume you mean the C500 Mark II there. We've already mentioned that a little bit, but have you got those numbers to hand again, Media?
No.
I
don't know if Barry is on the YouTube side to check that, but
so on a BP A60, you were saying that the C300 Mark III will last approximately 130 minutes.
It's 130 minutes when recording Cinema Raw Light on the C300 Mark III. It was, as I said, roughly about an hour and a half on a C500 obviously, because we've done a number of events, we've used the camera, and recording time, it is definitely less than that, because I mean, there are other elements that come into it, but you do see more the benefits of the low power consumption with the C300 Mark III.
Okay. Somebody is mentioning it versus the Sony FX9, saying that they'd probably go for the FX9 simply because of the electronic ND filter and the dual ISO. It will be very interesting to see side by side. I mean, the FX9 from Sony is a bit of a strange one because it is a large format sensor, so really it's more of a competitor for the C500 Mark II than the C300 Mark III, although I
think they're probably looking at the price.
Yeah, the price
probably
is more close to the C300, and it would be very interesting to put them side by side for the ISO performance to see
it will be interesting, because obviously when we announced the C500 Mark II, that was the one being compared a lot, even though they're still different cameras. The C500 Mark II was the one compared to the FX9, and C300 Mark II was the one kind of compared to the FS7. I still think, as I mentioned earlier about DGO, improving dynamic range on any ISO value used, that will still be an advantage our side. I understand obviously the FX9 is a larger sensor, so that will make a difference. But
and high frame rates. I mean, the high frame rates on your camera are better than on the FX9. The FX9, I suppose we don't know what they're going to do with the future firmware update, because they have said there are updates coming. But as it stands right now, you will get far more frames a second out of a C300 than you do out of the FX9. The other thing I would say, after having used them both quite a lot now, is that the autofocus system, although Sony's is dramatically better, I do still give the edge to Canon system, simply because of the way it's controlled. The touchscreen on the C300 Mark III and on the C500, and it's not just the touchscreen; it's the way that the UI is designed to make
The
that
touch
simple.
AF, I mean, focus guide as well. So for those,
Absolutely.
obviously, manual focus, shooting 4K or higher resolution, focus guide makes a massive difference, because relying on just manual focus speaking, and having to obviously zoom in into the image to check focus is not enough. So focus guide makes a massive difference, especially with faces as well. So even though you're in manual, it can still, because it's relying on dual pixel CMOS AF, so relying on that technology, it can tell when there is a face in the frame, and it moves that square or the rectangle onto the frame of that person. So it's easier for you to achieve that focus rather than having to try and...
That does make a big difference to just general day-to-day shooting. I mean, even if you don't trust the autofocus, even if you want to, as an operator, be manually focusing, having then the autofocus system saying, "Oh, I think you're a little bit wrong, and I think you're a little bit right there," and even if you then ignore it and say, "No, I know what I'm doing. You're wrong," at least it's still really useful to have that as a point of reference.
More and more people are actually using the autofocus, at least I know in our cameras, because they're trusting it more. I think probably going back 8 years ago, when there was the feature upgrade on like the 100 and the 300, I think 50% of those I actually spoke to, they didn't want autofocus at all. Mm-hmm. And you had the other 50% still kind of open to combining manual focus when they needed to, but an added advantage of having autofocus if they needed it. But now definitely more people are using it because there is more trust. I mean, it's been in use now for a number of years. Number of people have used it, face detection, and then you've got the face priority, fine-tuning the AF. It does make a massive difference.
Absolutely. Right. So Corey Jennings again says, what log profiles can we monitor in the EVF and the on-camera screen? C200 couldn't monitor C-Log2. I'm not sure I understand that question.
So with
Corey, do you, Medya?
So the C200, you didn't have the C-Log2 option, so you had to record, you had C-Log3.
Oh, and I then see. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, I'm guessing they're applying it. So C200 yes. C200. There is no Mark II. So C200, you had the C-Log3. Yep. You needed to record cinema raw light, and then using the Canon software to apply C-Log2.
Gotcha. Whereas
with this, you have C-Log2 and 3, so you can basically, whichever one you decide to use, absolutely. You can basically see it on a viewfinder or the touch screen. So the touch.
And in fact, you're saying C-Log2 is the way of getting the best results out of the camera. Okay, Peter Demetrius, hello Peter, says, will the C300 Mark III come with a free CF card, express card, and reader? Sorry, a free CF express card. Don't give them a free CF card. That'd be very useless.
Won't make a difference.
A free CF express card and reader like the C500 Mark II. I don't think I've seen a promotion that will do that.
That's something that we probably have to check and get back to you guys to put it on your website.
We're still quite far away from the launch. So
I think at launch probably it will, because if anyone is upgrading from the C300 Mark II, they're not going to have the right card. Mm-hmm. So most likely, but as you said, still a bit of time before sales start or before the camera is available. But most likely, as I said, if there are any changes, we'll definitely confirm it with you guys and you put it on your website.
Absolutely. So side handles and still just top handle. Mof says, I'm not entirely sure what that means, Mof. Reply back with a bit more detail on that. Side handles, just top handle. So there's a side handle built onto the side of the camera, which you can remove if you want to, like most Canon cameras for the last 6 years now. That's been fairly consistent. And then the top handle again, which is very easy to remove, the top handle. Corey is back saying, can you record audio in higher frame rates than 60p? Which is a brilliant question.
Ooh.
I don't believe you can.
I don't think... I think the minute you're in higher frame rate, I don't think so. But it's again, I've only had the camera since yesterday afternoon. And it was a busy afternoon because all you guys had it before us.
Sorry.
So you're probably more likely to answer that question than me, but I don't think there is.
Basically, there's two ways of creating a slow motion file in a camera. Either you record, so let's take 100 frames a second. Either you can record your 100 frames a second file as 100p, and so it's as if it was real time, so your audio goes alongside it in sync, and then you can conform that in post-production and play that 100p file back as 25p, and therefore get slow motion, and then the audio still would exist. Or that, I know that is not how Canon do it in camera. The way that Canon do it in camera is to do it as slow and fast motion, so that it reads the sensor out at 100 frames a second and then uses a buffer to conform that in camera to 25p. So you're left with a 25 frames a second slow motion video file on the media card ready to take into post-production. Now there are ways of still doing that as a whole. You can't record audio, but there are ways of doing that and recording a separate audio file.
Yeah, I mean, separately probably doable, but internally I don't think it's possible. So
I tell you what, while we answer the next couple of questions, I will plug in my hard drive and see if I can tell whether those audio files that I shot, slow motion files, had any audio on them.
Okay.
Let's get a next question for you to answer while I'm doing that. Suggestion: all the new Canon cameras are awesome, great colors, great dynamic range, but you never see footage in 4K HDR posted to YouTube that lets you see that dynamic range on an HDR TV, which is very valid. Do we know of any properly HDR graded footage that's available from the camera or from the C500?
Probably from the C500 most likely, because the camera has been around now for a few months.
Yep.
The 300, I don't think we have. I mean, as I said, now on UK level, we don't have. Ollie obviously is one of our DOPs actually used the camera. So whether he produced anything, not sure, but that's something that we can basically check. And if we do, then we can put a link where you can actually get that.
I'm not going to try and grade my footage into HDR and put it up on YouTube, I'm afraid, simply because I am not a colorist by any stretch of the imagination. I think I will leave that one to Ollie. So Ollie Kedgington, if you are watching, I will I will be badgering you for an HDR edit of whatever you've got up your sleeve. Okay. Sam Montague wants us to just refresh. What are the higher frame rates recording at 1080p?
So you get if you're in Super 35 XFAVC, yes. You can get obviously full HD. Same applies to when you're recording, as I said, 4K UHD or 2K, up to 120, or in Super 16 when you can actually push it. So if you want anything higher than 120. You will need to go to Super 16 or the crop mode, where you still have the full HD option as well there, and you can push it to 180 if you really want to.
Okay, so I've looked on the hard drive about the slow motion audio thing, and I don't believe it does. I've got my MXF files and an XML files, but there are no separate files I don't for audio. Yeah. So I don't really want to open up editing software on this computer right now in the middle of a live stream to have a look, just because that might bog the computer down quite a bit. So I don't believe there is. Right. Reza says RF mount. Now, this is, I'm sure you won't have you're probably sick of hearing this, Medya. I think this is one of the mysteries of this, and one of the few actual disadvantages of this new body design is that it looks like the interchangeable lens mount wasn't designed for RF. I mean, it looks like if you did have an RF mount on the front of that camera and then put an RF lens on it, the back of the lens would actually have to be inside the front of the camera. Is that right, Medea?
Yeah, it's the same principle as what we said about the flange distance when we were talking about, because when we introduced the EOS R system, everyone wanted those lenses, the RF lenses, to go on the SLRs. Same, because it's the same principle, the way they work, they have to be closer to the sensor compared to our standard EF lenses. But then again, looking at it, if you look around, I mean, in the market, whether Canon EF lenses or other manufacturers actually making lenses, there are more EF lenses and PL lenses in the cinema world or even in the photo world than RF lenses. I mean, as great as they are, hopefully in the future, hopefully something like that might happen. But changing into an RF mount with the C300 Mark III, I can't see that. I can't see how that would work.
I don't think. Now, the debate is, of course, could Canon have designed this new body system knowing that they were making RF mounts to work in a way so that it could take RF mount? And I mean, that's a topic that I don't think we will ever know unless... Do you have a stock answer for that, Medea, from Canon?
I don't know. I mean, I think if looking at every DOP probably shooting, I don't know, a documentary or something with the number of lenses that they might have in terms of Canon cinema lenses or Canon EF lenses, PL lenses, if this C300 had an RF mount, I think everyone probably will basically say that that's it. I think Canon has lost it. I mean, I know there is there is probably a market for a cinema use camera, and maybe with an RF mount. I just don't think
adapters that you make.
I don't think there is probably for the 300 Mark III to have an RF mount. I don't think they're going to please the majority. I mean, definitely we can't please everyone. We have to bring out a solution that makes everyone's life easier and that works with the majority. As I said, in the future, I'm not saying that it will never happen. In the future, maybe, but an adapter with these cameras, like with the 500 or with the 300, I don't know.
With a small camera like the EOS R, you can be an adapter is fine. The bigger the camera gets and the more professional the users are, the less tolerant they are of adapters and things like that. And interchangeable lens mounts like this are different. So maybe there would have been a way of having a taller, thicker lens barrel option for EF and PL in an interchangeable lens mount. Who knows?
As I said, I mean, in the future, who knows? But in the current
in the current cameras, I think it is evident that Canon have not designed these cameras with RF mount in mind. Would that be nice? Yes, probably. Will it impact how widely used the C300 becomes? I don't think it will. I think even if they had, and there are some lovely RF mount and very exciting RF lenses that you guys are bringing to the market. But remember, they are all fly-by-wire. So EF does still have better options for video, even though some of those RF lenses are very exciting. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem for the majority of people using it.
No, I think, I mean, the majority of people upgrading probably, using a C200, looking at a 300, or those using a C300 Mark I or Mark II and looking to upgrade again. I think all of those, not having an RF mount is not going to affect them. I think probably the smaller, there will be, I don't know, 10, 15%. I doubt it if it's 50% of people would have wanted the RF mount. I think as an idea, looking at the quality of our RF lenses, it's amazing. I mean, I love the primes, the 50, the 85, amazing. But then again, you got to look at the practicality of it and how many EF lenses we have in the market, cinema lenses as well. It's a tough one. But I guess we'll just have everyone needs to keep stay watching and see what happens in the next few years. You never know.
Absolutely. We've got a clarification from Graham as well. Graham works at Canon and says that the C300 Mark II will not have a CF Express card in the box. They could potentially do an offer though at launch, and they will look into that as a promotion get one free or half price or something like that when you the camera. So, but at the moment there's not
the
gonna
card
be anything.
offer, isn't
the
it?
card offer, yeah. Just going back to the lens mounts just a little bit, I would be really curious to hear what people watching this, what are the reasons why you would like to see an RF mount on a camera like the C300 Mark III? Let me know in the chat. Is that
actually, that
so
would be interesting, yeah.
Is it so that they want to use RF lenses? So they want to take something like the 28 to 70 millimeter f2, for example, a really exciting lens. Is it because you want to actually buy and use one of those with it? Or is it because of the short flange distance, so therefore you can open up all sorts of other older lenses and adapt and lots of adapters and all of that stuff like we see on lots of mirrorless cameras?
It could be, I'm guessing, just having a guess, it could be because obviously of the R5
well, yes,
announcement with all the video features. And probably if someone is thinking, if I'm getting the R5, I want to get to use it as a B camera with another cinema camera. I want to be able to use the same lenses. I mean, technically, yes, in the EF lens you're using with the C300 with the adapter, you could still use it on the R5.
Sure.
But the other way around, I guess there'll have to be a compromise somewhere.
Absolutely. Okay. Greetings from Australia, from Momentum Studios. Just joined, so sorry if you've covered this, but how would the image match up compared to the C200? Will there be a huge difference in color?
The dynamic range is higher with this camera, but I think the mixing footage from one the other, it will work. But as I said, there will be a difference because we get in. Even when shooting cinema raw light and applying C-Log 2 and pushing dynamic range slightly higher, the C300 will deliver a high dynamic range than a C200.
And
so there will be that difference. The noise as well, that would be a difference.
I imagine there'll be a big difference there because DJI does seem to hide that noise down.
Yeah. So the DJI, as I said, is pushing the dynamic range, lowering the noise, but the two cameras will still work together.
Absolutely. I imagine the color's going to be fairly similar between them. Do you think?
I mean, the color science is still, as I said, the Canon color science is still there. So,
so that's the raw side of the camera. The non-raw side of the camera, there will be quite a large difference because it's the MP4 8-bit versus the 10-bit XFAVC. And as we've always said with this C200, it's not that now that there's something else we're trashing on the 8-bit MP4. The 8-bit MP4 is really good. It's better than people think it is. I still come up against this with customers day after day where they go, oh, it's an 8-bit MP4, I don't want that. Go, hang on, try it because it's actually really quite nice quality. You might be surprised. But it's not 10-bit XFAVC all-I. That's a different kettle of fish, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there are still two different cameras. There is a price difference between the two cameras. They're used mainly by you get two different users for them. I expect if anyone is mixing footage from a C200 and a C300 Mark III, most likely to be cinema raw light. But as I said, if you want to shoot XFAVC, or as you said, the MP4 on a C200, you probably would want to do all the work on a 300 rather than mix the footage between the two cameras. But it all depends on where that footage is going anyway, because the size limitation, the processing power on the computer, for example, that will make a difference as well.
So Jay asks, is Canon worried that this camera will have a big knockback on sales of the C500 Mark II, as that has not been long released? Do you want to talk about that at all, Midia?
They are still, they might have a lot of similarities, but they have differences as well. And the C500 Mark II being a full frame camera, so the target market is still different, even though it's been used by, again, wide range of applications. Maybe it will take some of the sales out of the 500, but I can't see it being a massive. I can't see.
It's certainly not a case of the
affecting
C300
it massively.
Has come along.
It's not a replacement,
No, therefore the C500 is redundant. Why would anyone want that when you've got this? Not at all. That's an amazing large format cinema camera.
Yeah.
It's 5.9K with a large format sensor, and it's a beautiful camera.
But still, as I said, they are still two different cameras. There is still benefit of using a C500 if you need the resolution. As I said, in cinema, for example, it is full frame, 5.9K.
Yep.
The oversampling to get 4K as well. The shooting at higher ISO that will make obviously or low light is better in the C500. So there are a number of differences, benefits of using the C500. If someone needs the 4K 120, then yes, obviously the C500 might not be right for them. A 300 Mark III is. So I guess it's weighing up the options depending on what they need the camera for and which features are more valuable to them.
Sure. One thing I would point out that I was looking at this morning, which was really good, is our friends over at Cinema 5D have released, they've started to do these dynamic range lab tests, which are really good. And I really applaud them for having the courage to do that, because it's a really difficult thing to do and they've got a fantastic engineer called Gunther, who is doing these. I believe his name's Gunther. But they are scientifically measuring as a standard as many cameras as they can. Now, obviously, you've got to... The difficulties with measuring dynamic range is that it's very hard to compare one number versus another. So Canon is saying 16 stops for this, whereas in theirs, it's I think it was 12.8 stops it achieved in theirs, because they released one this morning for this new camera. But you've got to put that in relation to the other ones that they've tested. So you can only really look at one method of testing to compare. But that is third place of all the cameras that they've ever tested. The first being the Arri Alexa and the second being the C500 Mark II. So C500 Mark II has got the second best dynamic range compared to the Arri Alexa, which is used throughout Hollywood and is significantly more expensive. And then this comes very close third, just underneath the C500. So is the C500 better? It's got more dynamic range. Even though all this DGO stuff has come along, the C500 still, with its large format sensor, shouldn't be underestimated. Okay.
Plus, I mean, I guess the test obviously that they've done was done on a pre-production C300 Mark III. Yeah. So just bearing that in mind,
it might get better.
But it's still, yeah.
Right. Let me see. I think Barry's joined in the chat and has started answering people's questions, which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for doing that, Barry. So I'll just bring attention to some of these people who maybe not be reading the chat. Mof has asked, does the in-camera stabilization with the IS lens work in tandem with the in-body image stabilization, which I think is a really good point.
So if you're using an IS lens, the camera will use two axes from the lens and then 3 axes from the body. So it combines the two. If you're using a lens without IS, that's when it uses the 5 axis IS.
Oh, right, the questions are coming thick and fast. Thank you for all of this. You're really testing whether or not I can talk at the same time as looking at questions. Okay. Lots of people talking about RF lenses, which is fantastic. Some people do. Lou Movie says, I went all in on the RF lenses and I'm stuck with the EOS R now. Have to wait for the R5, but no cinema camera option for me. Sure, you won't be able to use those RF lenses on the Cinema EOS, but the R5 doesn't look like something that I would be too unhappy to be stuck with. Let's put it that way.
I mean, features is an amazing. It's going to be an amazing camera. So
certainly is. Corey says, do you need to restart the camera to go into Super 16 mode? I don't believe you do.
No, you don't need to. You just switch. No.
Okay. Can you provide a little bit more information about the external recording options? So, I mean, that's changed since the C300 Mark II because of the RAW now being internal.
Yeah.
Do you know what it can do over its HDMI and SDI ports, Media?
So 4K up to 60.
Gotcha. In 422, 10-bit?
Yeah. As far as I know, yeah.
Julian Wakefield, hello Julian, says, does it have an internal ND filter? Absolutely.
Same as before. So up to 10. So you've got 2,
Yep.
4, and 6, and then you can expand it to get the 8 and 10.
Peter Demetrius says, bye bye Sony. Canon are kicking ass with their new camera releases at the moment. I'm sure you're really unhappy to hear that, Melia.
Yeah, very unhappy.
Oh dear. Okay. Okay, iFilm Flops says, what's changed at Canon? You guys are putting great features into every camera. I love it. It seems different from the past where it seemed very reserved. So he thinks
That's
you're
true,
having a bit of a
actually.
different approach.
It is actually true. But you see obviously that more in the DSLRs and the mirrorless rather than on the cinema cameras.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is still obviously market for the cinema cameras because of everything extra you get, all the professional controls you have. But if someone doesn't want to go to the size of a C200 or a C300, then an R5 or 1DX Mark III is another alternative, or even using the two together. So the R5, hopefully when it's out, 1DX Mark III, they can all be B cameras with the 300 Mark III, with the C500,
Absolutely.
and with other cameras. All of them with C-Log as well. So again, you can match footage.
It is great to see that with the R5 in particular, it looks like Canon are really paying attention to the video side of a camera that small, because we've had the Cinema EOS lineup for a while now, which has been brilliant, but since the 5D Mark II probably, which was almost accidental down at that sort of the small camera end.
Yeah.
It does seem like second video has always been second best, because primarily they are stills cameras. But I think the majority of the leaked features we've actually seen about the R5 have been video related. Do you think that's fair?
For this one, yes.
Yeah.
I think with the R5 and other cameras, the challenge is obviously, as you said, they are primarily stills cameras. You don't want to annoy or upset photographers because you add in video features on a stills camera.
Sure.
So if someone is spending, I don't know, £3,000, £4,000 on a camera, they don't want to be paying for video features, especially if they're not using them.
Yep.
I think, but the good thing is, I think more and more people now are getting into video because it's much easier to shoot, much easier to edit.
Yep.
Like on the 1DX, for example, 1DC, 1DX2 as well did a great video. 1DX Mark III, you even have more options on the video side, which is crazy. The R5 obviously is pushing all boundaries and having pretty much everything that people probably would have wished on the video side, which is, in a way, it's just a good thing that we actually have confidence in our products to do that.
Absolutely. Ali Kazi says it looks like I've missed his question right from the beginning. So sorry about that, Ali.
Oh.
It's rather difficult to keep up.
Barry's not checking all of them.
I think we might need him to elaborate a little bit more on it. But right at the beginning, he says, I'm looking to start my video production business. Should I buy the C300 Mark III or the latest C500 Mark II? I like the C500 Mark II more because of the full frame sensor, but it's just the price he doesn't like. I think we probably need to know a little bit more about you and your work.
Oh yeah, we need a lot more than that. Yeah,
it's probably not something that we can answer, which is probably why I may have skimmed over it in the first place during a live stream. But that just because we can't answer that during a live stream does absolutely not mean that we can't help you there. That's what ProAV does every single day, all day long. If you email sales@ProAV, one of our sales team who are brilliant will give you a very, very detailed conversation going through the ins and outs of your work, what you need to do, what camera will be right for you, all the rest of it. So that would be, I think, my recommendation is drop the normal sales line an email there. But if you want to add any more information there, we can see what we can do on the live stream for you. Absolutely. Right, let's see if we've got any more questions here for thing. I didn't understand your point about dynamic range. Which one is higher, the C300 Mark III or the C500 Mark II? I guess by our points, he might have been referring to when I was talking about Cinema 5D's tests.
I think, I think that's what you...
I probably didn't explain that too right because I'm too excited. But in their tests, the C500 Mark II had a very slightly better dynamic range than the C300 Mark III, which will be because of its large format sensor. But Media did point out that the C300 Mark III is a pre-production camera on pre-production firmware, so there is potential that that will improve. So it'll be interesting to see if they redo those tests once we've got a final camera and see where they then sit. But right now it's looking like the C500 Mark II might just have the edge. But to be honest, they're very similar. And they're both good, really good.
I mean, as I said, we stated 15 plus with this 500 Mark II, 16 plus with C300 Mark III. Obviously, the way cameras get tested when it comes to dynamic range, they use different ways. Looking at the C500 because it's a full frame, so there is the advantage of the larger sensor, but DGO system in the C300 Mark III should give the camera the edge. But as I said, it's still a new camera. We haven't actually had enough time to play with the footage and test it properly. So,
okay, Brian Benoit says, "Are we allowed to talk more about the R5 recording time limits on the 8K?"
I'm afraid we can't talk about anything that hasn't been disclosed.
Well, should we talk about what has been disclosed?
I mean, yeah, anything that's been basically announced is fine.
Absolutely. So the 8K, they've said that is going to be the full width of the sensor, which is lovely.
Yes.
That it's going to be in RAW, or I think
8K, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Am I right in remembering that it was the only non-RAW options that have been announced so far are H.265?
Yeah. So it's like with the 1DX Mark III when using C-Log. You get basically the 42210 bit, but it's H.265 or HEVC.
Gotcha. Okay. Is Canon RAW Lite debayered in camera like Blackmagic RAW is? That's a very in-depth question on RAW there. I don't know off the top of my head whether it saves the debayering process till post-production, which is, I believe, what Red do and I believe what ProRes RAW does, or whether it does a deep. I don't think Canon have actually disclosed that off the top of my head. I don't think we know that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember going. I mean, it's probably something just to be on the safe side. That's something that I'll have to double check, and then we can, I guess, post the answer at some point. So.
Yep. If you use the EUV2 adapter, so that's the larger module that goes on the back, is there a setting or a way to use channel 3 and 4 dials to control channel 1 and 2 so that you don't have to reach around the camera to use channels 1 and 2? We don't always need 4 channels of audio. Do we know that?
You should be. I mean, if you're only using the 2.
Mm-hmm. I think he's referring to there's a problem with the current body design where the audio dials.
Oh yeah, with the controls on the other side.
On the other side of the camera from the operator if you're using it up on a shoulder. So
yeah.
On the module you can do this to change your dials, whereas the other one you'll have to reach around and go behind, which you can't see, and it doesn't work very well when you're on a shoulder for channels 1 and 2. If you can't, I imagine that would be something that could be added in firmware. Do you think, Media?
I'll have...
Certainly a good one to suggest to the engineers if it can't already do it.
To be honest, I can't see why it won't be doing it as it is now. And if not...
Barry has said, "Hi Ben, at this time you can't do that." So
can't do it, okay.
We will definitely feed that back to, because I think engineers, because I think that is a brilliant idea, Ben. And I don't see why they wouldn't be able to add that as an option in.
I'm sure that there is a logic behind it if it can't do it. So.
James Jackson Films wants to know, is the H.265 on the R5 all eye like on the 1DX Mark III? We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. As I said,
indeed.
if it's not mentioned on the website.
Right. Okay. I think that will be it then for questions. Thank you all so much for giving us all your questions and being so active in the chat. It's absolutely brilliant to see, and that's exactly what I wanted this to be. Media, thank you so much for firstly working for a company that's bringing out cameras like this. I think this is really great for Canon to be doing. I think it's a really, really good camera. I'm very pleased to see it hit the market, but thank you for taking time out of your, I imagine, quite busy day the day after the announcement like that.
Yesterday in particular, and then today, yeah.
Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and talk to us and to answer everyone's questions. It is very, very much appreciated. Okay, if any of you have any more questions at all about the C300 Mark III, please just email ProAV, ask for me, ask for the sales team if you've got any questions, or just leave them on YouTube underneath this video or underneath my actual overview video on the camera, and I will do my best to get back to you on those ones. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Your sadness in this bowl till you feel mine and changes in your body.
This stream is powered by Wirecast, a powerful multi-input switching and graphics solution for live streaming in any situation.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is a truly plug-and-play system that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one-button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd. the MKE600 is a shotgun microphone ideal for professional video camera applications. Maximal rejection of ambient side noises thanks to pronounced directivity. And because the MKE600 has a very good suppression of structure-borne noise, it makes one of the most versatile all-round shotgun microphones on the market.